hit you. And it's so easy to get stuck in this mentality of, oh, poor little old me. No one's gonna come rescue me. I'm worthless. I'm a victim. It's so easy to get caught in that mentality. But once you change your mentality into, I'm a survivor, I got this, somebody loves me, I love myself, I can get through anything, you really can. And this is the story of Allison Botha. She was assaulted and brutally hurt, to the point where she was left for dead. But she still got through it, and she's still out there telling her story. And I want to share that story with you. So this story begins in 1994 in South Africa on December 18th. She was in her mid-20s, and she was hanging out with her friends. So she was having a normal day with her friends. They all started leaving except for one friend, and she offered to give that friend a ride. So she gave that friend a ride and came back to her apartment. It was about 1 in the morning. Parking lot was empty, and there was one dude there that had a sharp object that's used for cooking. I'm not going to say the word because I don't want to get banned on TikTok, but it was something that used for cooking, a sharp metal object. And so that guy came up to her and basically told her to get into the passenger seat, and he hijacked her. He then drove that car over to his friend's house, and these dudes are really whack. So a bit of background about them. This is France and Tiens. France was the one that first took the car. And ever since he was 14, he was saying that he was possessed by the devil, by Satan, and he was in the army in his 20s. And yeah, they had recently gotten out, and they both, the dude that was driving and the dude that he went to go pick up, Tiens, said that they had dated witches in the past, and so that they claimed that they were somehow influenced by the devil. So on the way there, France asked Allison what her name was, and Allison gave him a fake name, and France also gave her a fake name, so they weren't sharing their real identities. But after France picked up Tiens, they started chit-chatting, and Allison was in the back, and she heard them use their real names, and so this is important for here in a bit. So they get to an empty field where they start assaulting her, and they ask her if she's going to fight, and of course she says no, and it happens. And afterwards they start stabbing her in the guts because they don't want her to have children anymore, and they stab her 30 times. So they stab her over and over till she gets knocked unconscious and comes back to it eventually because she's a fighter. They see that she comes back to it, and so they start cutting her throat, and they do this about 16 times. So it was very, very severe, and she passes out, but she's not really passed out, so she's kind of in between. So she plays dead, and she hears them ask one another if they think that she's dead, and they say to each other, there's no way anybody could have survived that. And they kind of congratulate each other. So they leave, and she somehow finds the strength to write on the sand. She writes their names, so she writes Tiens in France on the dirt, on the sand. She also writes, I love mom, so that her mom knows that she's thinking about her, even in what might be her last minutes. She is hanging on to dear life, and she hears cars passing by, so she knows that she's close to a road, and so she gets up and starts to feel something wet in her stomach, and it's actually her guts, and this is where it gets really graphic. Her clothes was near her, she was naked, so she grabbed her clothes and wrapped it around her guts and began walking. She was able to stand up and started crawling or walking however she could towards the road. Now everything is dark, and she doesn't know exactly why, till she starts feeling her neck, and she feels that her head isn't attached to her neck. So she has to hold her head while she's walking to get to the road. And she makes it to the road, and she lays down on the white lines of the road, so that she's for sure going to be seen as soon as somebody passes by. Luckily for her, somebody did pass by. It was this guy will be her hero. It was a young veterinarian student, and this guy's name is Tian, and he stops there and he's able to place her thyroid, it's an organ that we have here in our throat, back into her throat, and starts asking her questions, and she's able to squeeze her hand for yes and squeeze her hand twice for no, and she's able to communicate with him through that, and so he's able to find out exactly where all the injuries are. And this guy is just amazing. He tells her that she has the most beautiful eyes in order for her to keep her eyes open, and she answers by saying that he has the most beautiful smile. And she is able to stay alive just because he was there, and he stayed there until the ambulance showed up. It wasn't until 2 hours after the attack that the ambulance showed up, and luckily the emergency doctor that was on call, the surgeon, was a neck surgeon, so he was able to save her. So she just got extremely lucky. Now these guys are arrested because when she's in the hospital, they ask for the assaulters' names, and she's able to write them down, but the police want her to say it with her voice. So she's able to get the doctors to remove the tubes that are inside her so that she can speak, and she tells them that the names of the people that assaulted her, and so they're arrested and they're sentenced to prison. France is sentenced to 3 life sentences, and Tien's is sentenced to 1 life sentence without parole. The only thing was that in July of 2023, the laws in South Africa changed, and they were able to receive parole, so they're out there now, which is kind of scary that they're free now, but it happens. And so if you are interested in this story, there is a documentary and there's also a book. I haven't seen either of these yet, just because I very recently came across this story, but I just wanted to share this story with you because of how insanely difficult life got for her, but yet she was able to grasp on for dear life. She was able to tell herself that she deserved to live for her mom, for herself. She ended up having 2 children years later, and the veterinarian that saved her was one of the doctors that also helped with her labor. So he ended up being a doctor for humans instead of for animals, which is quite amazing. She was the vet was inspired by her strength, and I hope someone out there is also inspired by that story. And yeah, that's just how it goes sometimes. So don't be a victim, be a survivor. Peace.